Welcome to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. I'm Matthew of castingacross.com, where I explore the quarry and culture of fly fishing. This podcast is being recorded in the dead of winter. Well, if we're going to be honest, it's actually being recorded at the tail end of fall, but for all intents and purposes, everything's frozen. I'm sitting up in my room/office looking out at the river of water and my road that is frozen solid. There's not a leaf on the trees, and all of the birds are awfully chubby in anticipation for a few months of stark, bleak cold. So, of course, it's time to talk about new fly fishing techniques and how you should be getting involved in something completely different when the weather and the fishing is undoubtedly unpleasant. But actually, I think this is the perfect time to start thinking about incorporating a different technique into your fly fishing. And what is that technique? Well, it's Euro nymphing. Now, I am not the expert when it comes to Euro nymphing. I mean, I'm not the expert when it comes to fly fishing, but I've done enough of it, and I've tried enough of different styles within that broad umbrella of Euro nymphing to really come to appreciate using it, especially in the wintertime or on heavily pressured waters, or in places where I'm just having a hard time getting a good natural drift using a conventional setup. Now, I'm going to be talking about this for the next 20 minutes, and there are podcast series out there. There are podcast episodes that go for hours and hours with folks that are on the cutting edge of this. And of course, this is something that has been really popular in the United States for the last 5-ish years, maybe at the really popular level, but it's certainly been in the angling consciousness of the United States for something about like the last 10 or 15 years. And of course, it's something that's been very popular in Europe. And again, I don't have the time, energy, and effort to go down every rabbit trail, but there's different styles of what we call Euro nymphing, European nymphing. The Czech style, French style. There's all sorts of different techniques and tactics. But what I am interested in is catching more fish. What I'm interested in is gleaning aspects of every one of these things and quickly incorporating it into how I fish. Because I'm not going to be a Euro nymphing like elitist, or I'm not going to make that my only type of fly fishing that I do. I'm going to utilize it to catch fish, like I said, when fish are being picky, when fish are being spooky, when fish are hard to get to, or when it just seems like the best approach for me to take at any particular lie, run, or presentation. Well, all of that said, what is Euro nymphing? What is Euro nymphing? I would say pause this podcast. Make sure you come back to it if you pause it. But go look at this. Watch how people do it, because it is important to understand what it looks like. But if I can describe it at its most basic level, it is a tight line approach to nymphing. Now you might say, well, I do that all the time with my 8.5-foot 5-weight. What's different? Well, it really comes down to a few tackle modifications. And again, I'm oversimplifying this. A few tackle modifications that allow for a greater feel as you're making these tight line presentations to trout using nymphs. So generally speaking, you're going to be using a 10 to 13 foot rod that is designed to be used from a 0 to 3 weight line. Now, that might sound absolutely ridiculous to have a 11-foot 2-weight. Well, if you are thinking in terms of a normal trout fishing fly rod taper, then yes, that would be absolutely ridiculous. You're kind of actually looking more like a tenkara rod if you start thinking in those terms. But the way that these Euro nymphing rods are designed, they're actually much more bulky down by the butt, a big, hefty, full wells handle often. And they are designed, though, to have that sensitivity in the tip where you're able to detect strikes. And that truly is where you're going to get the benefit of utilizing some aspects of the styles and techniques of Euro nymphing. You are going to be utilizing a technique as well as tackle that's going to maximize your ability to be in contact with your flies, which means being in contact with fish. So That's the first aspect of it. You're going to be using a longer fly rod. Now, can you do this with a 9-foot fly rod? You can absolutely do it with a 9-foot fly rod, but you do have benefits in using a rod that is specifically designed for this because it is going to have that sensitivity and it's going to have a little more length. And if you're going to maintaining that tight line, so the tip of your fly rod directly down. So under normal circumstances, traditional Western style fly fishing, you cast your line out in front of you and your drift is going to be something between 15 to 40 feet out in front of you, of course, moving upstream, across in front, and downstream. So you might have a connection to your line, to your fly, but it is going to be at an angle and you're not going to have that tight connection. So will you feel strikes? Absolutely. You can feel subtle strikes, especially if the water is calm, especially if you are just an experienced angler and you have really high quality gear and you have a really good cast and presentation. But it's not the same as having that line be on or that fly be on a tight string between the rod tip and your fly. That's what you're doing in Euro nymphing. That window or that channel or that lane of where your fly is drifting is really coming down at a sharper angle from your rod tip, not going to be 15 or 40 feet out. We're talking within 5 or 10 feet, 10 feet max of where your rod tip is, and it's not going to be that far upstream, and you're going to follow your flies, or really lead your flies, I should say, as they come downstream, not pulling them. Of course, you're not going to be imparting drag on your flies, but you're going to be leading your flies as they move through the feeding lane of the fish that you are attempting to catch, or the fish that you think that are going to be there. So really, that is what differentiates, from a big picture perspective, Euro nymphing from other Western fly fishing tactics. Now, you can certainly accomplish, like I said, all of these things utilizing your normal fly fishing tackle. You are able to do that, and actually, there are plenty of times where that is something that you should consider doing. Where if you are able to get into position for a fish that might be 13 to 15 feet in front of you, you can use your 9-foot fly rod and a good extended arm and a well-constructed nymph rig to run a series of flies through that stretch and maintain a good tight line. But like I said, the tackle and the exposure and the opportunities for getting into equipment, if this is something that you are interested in, have become very common, especially in the last 5 years. But there's companies that have been doing this here in the United States for the last 10 and maybe even 15 years, you could say. So, what are the benefits of fishing this way? Why would you want to do this? Why would you want to go out and invest in one more fly rod that has a very unique application? Because, like I said, this is not going to be a rod you cast. Now, it's interesting. There are manufacturers out there that say, this is a 10-foot 2-weight that you can cast a dry fly with. And I'm sure you can. I mean, I could go downstairs and grab a shovel from my shed and put a fly line on it, and I'm sure I could cast a dry fly with it. But do I want to? That's a completely different question. You really have to commit that this is how you want to fish. And if those bugs are flying around, then you have two things happening. One, you're going to be you're not going to have the confidence to fish that nymph rig right, to have that focus and attention. If you are thinking, I really should be fishing a dry fly right now, you're not going to be giving fishing that tight line nymph rig your all, which I think, and as I've talked about before, that is going to seriously inhibit your effectiveness as you're fishing any pattern, no matter if it's the right pattern or not. The way you fish it is as important as what you're fishing. Secondly, if you do decide to switch over, you're not going to be able to do that as efficiently and effectively. So, kind of before we get into more Euro nymphing stuff, I like to do one of two things. If I'm going out on a river that is larger and I'm going to be far from my car, so a half mile or further, then I will carry two rods. Generally speaking, if I am using a Euro nymphing technique and I'm using a Euro nymphing rod, I'm going to be on a larger river. And so I'm able to utilize a system where I have a second fly rod either lashed to my pack, or what I like more is using a rod holster. I have one from Vitavu. I know there's other companies, Opros make them as well, and having my second rod on my hip and quartering away from me, so I'm able to make all those presentations with my nymphing rig, and then if I see a streamer situation or I see a dry fly situation present itself, I can switch those off, and I'm not I'm not limited in my ability to make that presentation, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, utilizing a particular kind of gear to make a particular presentation. You're optimizing the effectiveness of putting that fly in front of the fish. And so if I feel like I am going to want that flexibility, in my mind, it is reasonable to carry two fly rods with me. And again, that works well if you're not bushwhacking and if you're not wading really deep, and if you have that kind of clearance on the stream. So that is something that I would recommend if you are going to be further from your car, don't feel like you have to sell out and just say, well, I guess I'm only fishing nymphs this day or this trip. Definitely consider carrying two fly rods with you. Before I continue talking about Euro nymphing and some of the gear and some of the techniques and why you want to do it, I did want to mention that you can still get online, go to manscaped.com and use code CASTING, CASTING, to get 20% off and free shipping on your entire order. Manscaped.com. Now, why Manscaped? Well, you should take care of yourself. You should make sure you're clean from head to toe. And now, these days, Manscaped is in the business of keeping you clean from head to toe, not just in those bathing suit areas. But what I want to talk about specifically today, a product that I think is fantastic. It works for the dead of winter, but it was really going to be very, very helpful as things start to get warmer, which they will, I promise. We are not living in the next ice age. They will get warm and hot, and you will want crop preserver. Crop preserver, all right? Now, what this is, it is a deodorant and anti-chafing cream, all right? So you can just imagine in the middle of summer, you've been waiting all day. Maybe you have been hiking all day, and you're going to start to get uncomfortable. And you're also not going to be that pleasant to be around in that car ride back. So you get some of this stuff, crop preserver, and you apply it wherever you need to apply it. Use your imagination. And it's going to do two things. It is going to cut down on chafing, which can be miserable in the hot weather, especially if you are wet wading and you maybe don't have on all of the proper undergarments because you want to be dry. But also if you are going to be in waders. This stuff is going to save the day, and it's going to save your most important things in this world. All right, so what you do, if you want to check out crop preserver, you go to manscaped.com, you enter that in the search bar, and make sure you put casting in the promo code box when you go to checkout. That will get you 20% off and free shipping. Again, go to manscaped.com, put in casting, CASTING, for 20% off and free shipping on your whole order. So you have your Euro situation in front of you. You kind of know that you have this stuff, that you're going to have this tight line. Does that mean you can just throw on any fly line and on any leader? Absolutely not. And this is where a remarkable amount of information exists online. I mean, what I am talking about now is the most surface of all surface level stuff. But I think to get you started and maybe to get your perspective right, I did want to share a few things. First of all, the reel matters. You need a good reel. And what you need a good reel for is twofold. One, you're going to be working with delicate tippets, and you're going to be working with long tippets. And so you want to have a reel that has a drag that's going to be able to absorb some moving fish. Because ideally, you're going to be getting into bigger fish and lots of fish. And so you want something that is going to be able to absorb that initial pull of that fish. That startup inertia needs to be taken care of by that reel. Secondly, you're going to want a reel that is able to balance out your rod, because you're talking about a maybe 10 to 12 foot rod. So it can't be this dainty little light cast reel that weighs nothing. If that happens, your arm's going to get tired and you're going to not have that sort of sensitivity that is really very, very important as you're engaging in this type of fishing. You don't want that rod tip to feel heavy. You want it to feel light in hand, and so you want a reel that balances out that rod. So that's the second important thing. Thirdly, you want a reel with a diameter such that you don't have more coils than you need to have in your line or in your leader material. because you want to have line that is limp and supple and creates a nice tight connection between really your rod tip and your flies, but it would be even better if it was all of your guides, your rod tip and your flies. And so you want a reel with a good drag, you want a reel with a wide spool, and you want a reel that balances your rod well. And you'll actually see reels these days that you're able to change the weight to make that rod and reel balance perfectly, which I've talked about before. And there's actually some kind of cute ways you can get around this if you don't want to invest in a Euro Nymphing specific reel. But any large arbor solid trout reel will do. I do suggest disc drag for this, and I do suggest making sure that reel isn't the best budget reel or just the reel that you're kicking around in your drawer already, but something that fits right. And then the fly line, really, I don't feel the need to use Euro nymphing specific fly line. I know it's out there, and I know it's great, but also a really good, just normal traditional trout fly line will work under most circumstances. If this is something that you're going to be doing exclusively, then you're going to want that Euro nymph specific fly line, because it is going to give you that narrower diameter, and it is going to allow you to maybe make longer casts, and cast there, of course, is in air quotes, because you're not so much casting as you are flipping. Now, people might say, no, it's a particular type of cast. Well, it is, but it's not the same sort of cast as a 10-2 beautiful dry fly approach, right? We all have to be okay with acknowledging that. It is casting, but it's not, casting. So I like the flexibility that a normal trout fly line gives, especially because I am not a hardcore Euro nympher. But having that, that Euro nymphing particular line does allow you to have a narrower diameter fly line that may be coming out the tip of your rod. But the reality is, a lot of times I don't have fly line coming out of the tip of my fly rod. I have a longer leader, and you build these leaders. You can buy these leaders, of course, but I think they are one of the best ways to start to understand the dynamics of tying leaders. I've written articles and I have podcasts about constructing leaders, and I think that we don't appreciate the value of a good leader as much as we should, just generally speaking across fly fishing world. And I would say it's something that doesn't kick in for a lot of folks until they really get into it, or they really appreciate the value of a well-tied leader. You might have a top-of-the-line fly rod, top-of-the-line fly line. You might have the right fly, but if you're just throwing on a knotless tapered leader out of the package and you're snipping back until you get to the butt section, then you are really messing up thousands of dollars worth of gear, because you aren't utilizing the most essential immediate gear that is touching your fly, which is your tippet and your leader. And that's certainly true for dry flies. It is to a lesser degree true for streamers and traditional nymphing. But when it comes to Euro nymphing, you really want this to be done well, because you don't want any sort of belly or dipping to occur between your rod tip and your flies. You want that nice, tight connection. So you use very supple line. I like to use Maxima Chameleon. I have a couple other different spools of different very supple leader material that is very, very helpful. And you get it in different weights, different diameters. And it can be, anything from, 20 to 14 to 8 pound. But, it really depends on the type of fishing you're doing, where you're fishing, how you're fishing. But you want that to be a strong, light, supple material. And so something like Maximus Chameleon is a good example of that. But you can also get it from all of the major fly fishing brands. They're putting out their butt section specific leader material that you can use, and it's going to be a longer length. Now, this is one thing, and I know that we're going off on lots of different rabbit trails here. You do want to make sure that the kind of fishing you're doing is within the legal parameters of where you're fishing. I don't know any states off the top of my head, but if you can recall, like back when Tenkara was like blowing up like 15 years ago, there were some states that wouldn't allow you to fish Tenkara in fly fishing only places because there was no reel, and the regulations specifically mandated that fly fishing was to be done with a particular kind of reel and line and leader and fly, right? The same is true for Euro nymphing, because I actually, here in Massachusetts, I think I'm legal. I think I am. I like fishing a mono rig where there's actually no fly line at all on my reel. It's all monofilament. It goes a couple of dozen yards of maxima into some monofilament or fluorocarbon for my nymph rigs. And I like that because, again, that fly line, especially if you don't invest in that nice quality Euro Nymphing fly line, another fly line might cause that belly and that sag, and you lose that direct connection. So that's the important treatise on leader and tippet material. You want to have that tight connection, no sagging between your rod tip and the water. And then also you can incorporate a sighter, which is really important. So instead of using a strike indicator, which inevitably will create a hinge, even if it's the most subtle strike indicator out there, like a little pulsa or even a little bit of fly line material that gets cut off as a little segment, that will create a hinge. But if you use cider material, which is a neon orange or green or yellow bit of monofilament, you're watching that bit of leader material and you are looking for it to dip or to jerk to the left or the right to detect strikes or ticking on the bottom that may be even more subtle than what you can feel, which of course, if we've all seen trout and how they feed, we know they feed very quickly and very subtly. And so it is important to have something like that on there, one, to identify where your drift is, but two, to also identify what's happening to your fly, whether it be the bottom or whether it be a strike. And then, and again, we're flying through this super cursory. If you are a Euro Nymphing expert, I'm sure you've clicked off by now because you're like, you're just blowing past all these important details. I am. I acknowledge that. But this is more for folks who have maybe dabbled in it, read about it a little bit, tried it once or twice, and like, I'm not sure if I know what this is. Or honestly, for the thousands upon thousands of anglers who have not committed to it and want to just kind of a cursory approach to it. But the last thing I would say is flies. You can use anything and everything. A lot of the flies that you see specifically designed for your nymphing are designed to be very streamlined. So you're not talking about super buggy flies. And if they are buggy, they are very weighted. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, you want that fly to get down in the water column quickly because you're not casting 10 yards upstream of your presentation. You're casting just a few yards upstream of your presentation, trying to get that fly down in the water column. And as much as weight matters, fly profile matters because you don't want that fly to have a lot of water resistance because then it is not going to get down quickly, regardless of how much weight is on it. And you get to that point where there's actually so much weight, it's difficult to cast or flip over. Similarly, you don't want to add too many pieces to that rig. So you don't want to use a big buggy fly with a couple of split shot upstream of it or up line of that, because now you've got this big tangled mess that you're trying to flip over. Is it impossible? No. Is it ideal? No, not in the slightest. So you're talking about streamlined flies. So these are a lot of these flies that if you see on Instagram or you see online or you see at the fly shop, they're very narrow. They are very streamlined. And what they rely on is they rely on attracting the attention of a fish, and they don't rely on attracting from a buggy standpoint, but maybe a little bit of flash or just being in that fish's face. I'm sure there's some sort of equation where a fish will strike something that's right in front of it, even if it looks less like normal food, versus moving a few feet over to take something that looks like a perfect exact imitation of a natural insect. I'm sure there's an equation out there that somebody has thought of, but that's kind of the way I think about it. But you can use any fly, but the ideal situation is one fly or two flies that get down quickly. And of course, there's different rigs, whether you put the heavier fly as the first fly or the second fly, and there's different techniques and strategies for each one. But again, this is a cursory look at an exciting and interesting and definitely a fish catching technique. The gear is in this instance really does help you accomplish the technique well, and I would encourage you to mess around with some stuff at your local fly shop, If you go out on a guided trip with somebody that does use Euro Nymphing tactics, ask them to give it a shot, and then you can commit to this kind of gear for kind of low money these days. I mean, you can talk about, maybe $400 or less to get into a full outfit of stuff that is going to do very well for you. But if you have particular questions, and you should, because I've really only scratched the surface, let me know, Matthew@castingacross.com, or go online and Google it, watch some videos, and actually here I'll mention a video at the end of this podcast as my recommendation for this week. This week on Casting Across, Monday's article is How Far South to Get Good Fishing. How far south to get good fishing. And the premise of this article is that you don't have to go to the Bahamas to fish well in the wintertime. You don't have to go down to Mexico to fish well in the wintertime. You don't have to go to New Zealand if you're here and they're there. I don't know how that all works, but you don't have to go super far. You will have to go a little further away. Why? Well, a lot of it is just giving yourself 10 to 15 degrees change in scenery. And also getting to a place where there is active fishing. So whether it be a tailwater or a spring creek, and then you getting out of your chilly environment and warming up 10 degrees, sometimes that's enough. So I talk about that in Monday's article, How Far South to Get Good Fishing. And Wednesday's article is called Trout and Feather, December 22. So I once again contributed to Tim Camisa's Trout and Feather. And this week, it is about observing fish. What do you get when you observe fish? And what's the benefits of that? And so there's a lot of things for you to check out when you go over to Tim Camisa's website, but you can definitely check out my article as well. And here's my episode recommendation for this week. He has an interview with Devin Olson about which fly rod you should buy for Euro Nymphing. So it's a 10-minute video, walks through what you could think about, what you should think about, what are some of the different options out there. And again, like I said, it's a great way to start thinking about if you want to invest in something like this, that you don't need to spend $700 or $800. You can spend $150 to $250, and you can get into some quality gear. So check out that video, which Euro Nymph fly rod should I buy, as well as some of the other videos that are there. I actually suggested 2 completely different videos in my article this Wednesday. Thanks for listening to the Casting Across Fly Fishing Podcast. Please subscribe to your favorite podcast app and rate the podcast in iTunes. Then head over to castingacross.com for 3 posts a week on the people, places, and things that go into the pursuit of fish.